Zoom Horror. A short, scary story. Written by Stories from the Attic. Narrated by Robin McConnell. "What is the capital of Colombia?" asked Travis, enjoying his turn as the quizmaster for their weekly quiz night. They'd all been friends since childhood, and university wasn't going to change that, even if they were at different ones. Travis had moved to New York, while Stefan and Ryan had stayed in their hometown of Mansfield, Massachusetts, but travelled into Boston for their studies. Sean had moved on campus at Brown University, so was only about 30 minutes from Stefan and Ryan. They still tried to see each other often, but it was hard for them all to be in the same room at the same time. The weekly Zoom quiz was something they all looked forward to. They all grew up together in the town, and their parents were all friends, meaning countless sleepovers and games while they grew up. Others had come and gone, but their friendship was the only constant. Solid. Unchangeable. "Bogota!" exclaimed Ryan. "Correct!" confirmed Travis. "Another point to Ryan!" Ryan was usually the winner of these quizzes, as he had an incredible depth of general knowledge. He was still living with his parents, but they were out for the evening as he was enjoying the Friday night with his old friends. All four of them were enjoying a beer together, relishing their new tradition. Ryan was on the Zoom call downstairs on the laptop, relaxing on the couch, as the other three were connected in their rooms. "In which country was Lego formed?" was the next question. All three of them had little paddles that they'd lift up when they knew the answer. It was their solution to the buzzer you'd usually see in quiz shows. "The UK?" asked Sean quizzically. He knew he was behind on points, so gave a hopeful guess. Sean had his own room to himself in a block of flats on Brown campus. "Nope," chimed Ryan, putting his little paddle up. "Go on then, Ryan, what's the right answer?" said Travis. "Denmark," was his correct response. Ryan's thirst for general knowledge was unmatched in the group, though he never could put that passion into his academic studies. "Ryan wins again," stated Travis. "Well, you'll all end up with better jobs than me, so just let me have my Zoom quiz," said Ryan. Travis was also living in a flat, but his was on campus in New York. He felt the most adrift from his old friends. The 3.5-hour drive was still close enough that he could go to see them now and again. His parents still lived in Mansfield, so he was still familiar with the area. After the quiz was over, they'd usually spend a few hours talking about politics, women, sports, news, and whatever else they could think of. Sometimes it would go on until the early hours, until they were too drunk to make sense. The clock had just drifted past 10:30 p.m., all of them already a few beers down. "I'm just going to grab another beer," said Ryan. He set his laptop down on the arm of the couch, the entrance to the kitchen in the background. Ryan went for a beer and Stefan did the same, while Sean took himself off to the restroom. Ryan's house was one big circle, and its main entrance opposite the stairs. Left from that was the living room, where he'd been sat all evening, leading into a larger dining area, then the back door. As you continued walking around, you'd get into the kitchen, which had a roomy understairs compartment. Following the kitchen, you'd end up back where you started, by the front door. With his three friends off the screen, Travis minimized the Zoom call to check on his Twitter feed. As soon as he did, he heard something smash through his headphones, and quickly flicked over to the screens on the Zoom page, but couldn't see anything. He looked at each screen to see if anything was going on, but he figured it was just one of the others dropping a glass or something. He went back to his Twitter until he heard an "I'm back" from Sean. "Did you drop a glass or something, Sean?" asked Travis. "No, buddy." "All right, I just thought I heard something. Might have been one of the other guys." Stefan was soon back on the Zoom call, new beer in hand, ready to talk about anything and everything. The three of them had a brief conversation as they waited for Ryan. That was until Stefan noticed something in the background. "Is that Ryan's feet?" On the screen was the doorway to Ryan's kitchen in the background. With its position on the edge of the sofa, you could see right through the dining room and all the way to the kitchen entrance at the other side of the house. What looked like feet poked out of the doorway. Someone was lying on the floor in the kitchen. It was quite far away and the webcam wasn't the highest quality, so they couldn't be sure. "Ryan, you okay?" said Stefan, hoping he could hear him from the laptop speakers. Ryan, however, had a habit of muting the laptop when he was away from him, just in case his parents came in and his friends were talking about something inappropriate. Is he messing with us? That is him, right?" said a confused Sean. "Guys, I heard a crash when you were all away, but I didn't see anything. Maybe he tripped and smacked his head or something?" said Travis. All three of them were closely looking at the screen, squinting to try and get a better look. The camera wasn't exactly high quality, and they were trying to check if what they were seeing was what it looked like. To them, it seemed like the feet and socks of someone lying on their back on the kitchen floor. "I'll call him," said Stefan, who only lived a 5-minute walk away. He got no answer as it rung out several times. The gentle inquiries through the Zoom call started to get a little more desperate. The feet were stationary. They hadn't moved an inch. "Ryan!" Sean shouted, not knowing that no one in the home could hear anything from the laptop. "He's not answering, guys. I'm going to go around. If he's pranking us, I'm going to kill him," said Stefan, a nervous laugh relaying the concern as he got up. Both Travis and Sean watched the screens closely, waiting for Stefan to arrive. Stefan was still living with his mom and dad, but he pretty much came and went as he pleased. He didn't say anything to them as he left the house to go to Ryan's. He walked briskly, wanting to run but thinking that would be silly. He shouldn't panic too much. Meanwhile, Travis and Sean looked closely at their screens. As they did, they saw what they thought were Ryan's legs judder and then quickly move from right to left. The feet disappeared as if someone dragged away the body. "Stefan, are you there? Is Ryan okay?" they asked desperately. They didn't get a response. Both of them turned the volume up to the maximum on their headphones, hoping to hear something. Even though Ryan had muted his computer, they could still hear sounds coming from the house. Travis decided to call both Ryan and Stefan, but both numbers rang out. They heard the clicking of a door in the background and the cry of "Ryan" coming from their headphones. Both realized it was Stefan calling out for Ryan and that he only just got to the house, which meant that he did not move Ryan. Stefan walked into the kitchen and saw a small patch of blood on the kitchen floor and a smashed plate. Ryan was nowhere to be seen, and he called out to him, trying to work out what had happened. Some of the blood appeared to be smeared, almost as if he had moved, or had been moved. Stefan took a quick look around the bottom floor and saw some more spots of blood, but not much else. He had a quick look upstairs and went into Ryan's bedroom, but saw nothing. He was trying to piece together what had happened, but had little to go on. He walked back down the stairs and decided to give his friends an update. "Hey guys, I've had a quick look and Ryan's not here, but there's some blood on the floor. Maybe he slipped and banged his head. He may have gone to hospital. I'll have another check round. If he's gone, then he's left his phone," he said to his friends, lifting up Ryan's phone, which was just next to the laptop, and showing it to them. "Steph, we think someone else is in there," shouted Travis. Stefan was already walking away from the screen, the sound still muted. They watched on as Stefan walked around the room, afraid about what might happen to him, unable to contact him. "Are we being paranoid?" asked Travis. "I don't know," replied Sean. "Maybe they're both just playing a prank on us. If they are, it's working." "I don't know whether to be pissed off or terrified," said Travis. Both of them were nervous, and also a little confused. "Well, hopefully it is a prank, 'cause yeah, I'm a little scared right now," replied Sean. They would soon realize that it wasn't a prank. Stefan continued to look around the room while they watched on. He walked through to the living room and into the kitchen, where the small pool of blood was. Travis and Sean saw a silhouetted figure walk past the webcam and follow Stefan into the kitchen. The figure was carrying something in his hand which they couldn't quite make out at first, As the object extended out from his arm, they could both tell that it was a baseball bat. Stefan walked around the corner, followed by the man, and they knew they couldn't do anything. Shouting into their microphones was useless, and it was too late to call him. The attacker stepped into the kitchen, and what followed was a muted flurry of crashing and smashing, which then stopped. At the same spot of the camera where Ryan's feet were earlier, blood pooled, slowly. Travis and Sean were mortified by what they'd just seen. It couldn't be happening. Could it be an elaborate joke? It wasn't in their nature. It didn't feel real. "Travis, I'm grabbing my gun and going over there. You call the police." "Okay, buddy. Stay safe." Travis picked up his phone, shaking. There were 4 webcams on his screen. One was himself, looking as white as a ghost. 2 were Sean and Stefan, who had left the screen, and the other was Ryan's webcam, which currently was perched on his parents' couch with a distant image of what looked like a pool of blood in the background. "Hi, I need the police." He considered getting in his car and driving, but he knew the near 4-hour drive would be pointless. Sean was only 30 minutes away. The police were on the other end of the phone, but Travis was in too much of a shock to give the right information. I think someone broke into my friend's home," he said. The officer tried to get more information out of Travis, but he wasn't making much sense. He mentioned that he'd thought it might have been a prank, that he was on a Zoom call, and how he saw what he thought was a pool of blood. Little did Travis know that the lack of clarity could be so costly. They said a car would be sent as soon as they could, but were busy with other calls. As he was mumbling over his emergency call, Sean was already speeding towards Mansfield. He'd never been in trouble with the law and had always been a good student, but here he was, with 6 beers in his system and behind the wheel. He knew it was wrong, but nothing else seemed to matter right now. He had his gun on the passenger seat with the windows open to throw as much cold air into his face as possible. He prayed that he wouldn't drive past any police cars on his way, as he was also driving faster than he'd ever done before. Overtaking at high speeds and flying around corners, he was frantic. The roads were fairly clear and he knew he'd be at the house in no time at all. All the while, he had his gun on the seat next to him, ready to be used if required. He'd never even fired a gun before. Though his father was keen on him having it, he was not keen on him learning to use it. He always resented his father forcing it upon him, but right now he was glad to have it. He sped through Mansfield, the streets that he knew so well as a child. He presumed that Travis had called the police, but wasn't taking any chances. He screeched up to the house. It was silent, eerie. There were certainly no police yet. He wondered whether he should wait outside and wait for the police, and 1,000,001 conflicts ran through his head. He tried to look into the house from the outside, but all the curtains had been drawn. He tried to call Ryan once again. No answer. He called Stefan. No answer. He called Travis. "Hi, I'm outside now," he said. "Have you seen anything on the webcam?" "No," said Travis. "Nothing. Just that pool of blood has got a little bigger." "Did you call the police?" "Yeah, they said they'd be here as soon as they can." "Right," said Sean, knowing he couldn't wait. "I'm going in. If you see anything, give me a call. I'll put my phone on loud. I'll unmute the laptop if I can." He'd seen the film and movies 1,000 times where the hero goes into the home and saves the day, but this was reality. He stood outside the door more terrified than he'd ever been before. His hand was shaking so much that he could hardly reach the door handle. This was a house that he'd been in hundreds of times before when he was a kid. He knew the layout inch by inch. He drew his gun as he walked into the home. He opened the door slowly, and all he saw before him was the bottom of the stairs and 2 closed doors either side. He could already see some marks of blood around the entranceway. There were spots on the floor and a few smears on the door handles and handrails. Sean was trembling and didn't know which door to go through first. He decided to walk through into the kitchen, not knowing what to expect. He slowly gave the door a push. It gradually swung open. As silently as possible, he crept through. As it opened, he saw that the kitchen was in a huge mess. Drawers had been opened, there were spots of blood, a few broken plates and smashed glasses. As it opened further, he saw the two pools of blood, a smaller one closer to him and a larger one a little further away by the entrance to the dining room. Sean's eyes filled up with tears, presuming that it was his friend's blood. It blocked up the doorway across from him, and he didn't want to step into it. Sean decided to retrace his steps and walk back past the front door and open the other door, which led into the living room. He opened the door with the same level of trepidation as he did the kitchen door, not knowing what would be behind it. He opened the door, and it was a much calmer sight. There were no spots of blood, and he could see Ryan's laptop in the background. He walked over slowly to it and saw that it was still connected to the Zoom chat. "Travis, are you there?" asked Sean, with his voice shaking, unmuting the chat from his end. "Yeah, man, what's going on?" "Doesn't look good. There's a lot of blood, but I've not seen anything yet. I don't know where Ryan and Steph are," said Sean, who placed his gun down on the couch to speak to Travis. All of a sudden, there was what appeared to be a thud of something falling from behind him. Sean's head swiveled around. "Did you hear that? Sounded like it came from the kitchen," he asked, seeing if Travis had heard it too. "I think so. Why don't you just wait for the cops?" I need to check if either of them needs help. I'll check properly downstairs, then I'll head upstairs," he replied, with Travis nodding his head, a sullen expression on his face. Sean grabbed his gun once again and needed to investigate. The internal layout of the home meant that it allowed him to walk around to the kitchen from the other side. Sean approached the kitchen. Travis watched on as his friend took small steps into the kitchen. Still not hearing anything else apart from the thud, Sean walked around with caution. As he approached the pool of blood, he noticed something that he'd not seen from the other side. There was a larger streak of blood from the main pool which led to another door. This was the door for the understairs compartment. It was a place where he remembered hiding from Brian and his friends many times in a game of hide-and-seek. His heart sank at the thought of what was hidden behind the door right now. For all he knew, it could be the attacker waiting to pounce, or it could be his friends. He had to step into the blood to get to the door, which nearly made him sick. He grabbed the door handle with his left hand while having his gun drawn with the other. His plan was to open up as quickly as possible in case the attacker was behind there. He counted down from 3 silently in his head. He got down to 1, and he swung the door open. What he saw shocked him to his core. Both Ryan and Stefan were stuffed into the small space, bloodied, beaten, and unconscious. As he opened the door, Stefan slumped out of the cupboard towards him. Sean leapt back in shock, slipping on the bloodied floor, and ended up falling out of the kitchen and onto his behind. His finger jammed on the trigger, and he fired a bullet into the glass window of the back door, shattering it into a million pieces. "Sean, are you okay?" came a distant shout from Travis as Sean had stumbled into view. Sean picked himself up and was too shocked to even acknowledge his friend. Tears were rolling down his face as he walked forward to Stefan's body. He checked his pulse, and there was none to be found. It only confirmed what he already knew, as his eyes were glazed open and there was a huge crack in his head. Stefan had been dragged into the small compartment and thrown on top of Ryan's body. Sean called out to Ryan, who was equally unresponsive. 2 of his best friends were dead, and he could hardly believe it. It put him into a daze, and he became completely unaware of his surroundings. Eventually, he snapped back to reality and realized he was still in danger. With a quick look around, he wondered who could have done this. His head was fuzzy, but the constant cries from Travis in the background eventually caught his attention. Sean stumbled out of the kitchen and made his way to the laptop that was still perched on the couch in the living room. There was blood on his shoes and jeans from where he'd slipped. "Call the police," Sean said. "I already called them. They're on their way. What happened?" Travis replied. He had underplayed the incident to the police and they didn't know the situation was as serious as it was. "Steph is dead. They're both dead. Someone's killed them." Travis's face went white. Numb. He couldn't speak. He eventually spluttered out, "I can't believe it," saying it repeatedly. Sean just sat there like a zombie for a moment, in complete shock, unable to comprehend what happened. "Is there anyone else there?" asked Travis, switching his concern to the best friend who he knew was alive. "No, they must have left before I arrived," he replied, letting his guard down and putting his gun on a nearby table. Unbeknownst to Sean, the attacker had been upstairs the whole time he'd been in the house. He was stealing as much as he could possibly get his hands on, and Ryan and Stefan had gotten his way. He was just about to leave with his large bag of jewellery and electronics before Sean came through the door. He'd stayed as still as possible, but when he heard the glass smash from the gunshot, he used the opportunity to make his way back downstairs. He had a bag in one hand and his bloodied baseball bat in the other. The shadowy figure was all dressed in black and made his way slowly into the kitchen, hoping to come through the back entrance that he'd originally used and make a getaway to his nearby car. He saw Stefan slumped down on the floor where he'd slipped out of the understairs cupboard. He stepped over him and looked around the corner into the living room, seeing Sean with his back to him, talking on the laptop. He looked at the back door and wondered if he should just make his escape. With all the smashed glass, he knew he couldn't be quiet, and thanks to the accidental gunshot, he knew Sean had a gun. He'd already disabled 2 people who'd got in his way. Why not a third? One quick strike across the head and he could get away without any trouble or a bullet in the back. He stepped out of the kitchen quietly, hoping to get Sean without being noticed. Travis shook out of his daze with the dark figure approaching over his friend's shoulder. The attacker drew the baseball bat backwards, waiting to strike. He'd snuck up on the other boys and was hoping to do the same again. He was steady and slow as he paced the bat into both of his hands. "Sean, he's behind you!" Travis shouted. Sean's eyes switched to the laptop screen and saw the figure that was behind him in the webcam starting his brutal swing of the bat. Sean instinctively ducked, and as he did, the bat swing missed the top of his head by a millimetre before crashing into the laptop, smashing the screen and putting Travis in the dark. The laptop stayed on, but he didn't have a picture. The sound was still on, but all he could make out was noise, shouting. He cried out for help, but there was nothing that could be done. He knew that Sean had to fight for his life. Sean found himself on the floor with his bat-wielding madman standing over him. At that moment he got a look at him. His eyes were bloodshot, his face was gaunt, and there were scabs and cuts all over it. A drug addict, doing anything he could to pay for his next fix. The madman took the bat in both hands and swung down as violently as he could. Sean put his hands over his head while kicking up at him. The bat hit a combination of Sean's foot and arm, breaking his left arm as it took most of the force. The kick thankfully had dislodged the bat from his arms as it fell to the floor. The two tussled on the floor as Sean fought for his life. He desperately tried to reach for the gun, which was on the table close by, but he couldn't get it. As he did, the manic attacker grabbed the bat once again. Sean stopped the attacker's arm with his right hand so he wasn't able to swing it. The attacker couldn't get his arms free, and instead pressed the bat across his throat, using both hands to press down. Sean tried to grab the bat, but he couldn't relieve the pressure. His left arm had been rendered useless, and he couldn't get the bat away with his right hand. He tried to kick out, but the invader had put his weight over him. All Travis could hear in the background was a struggle. The attacker leaned forward and repeatedly head-butted Sean. The young man fell weak as he couldn't get any oxygen into his lungs, staring up at this lunatic who'd already killed 2 of his friends. He couldn't feel the blood pouring from his nose. He couldn't hear anything. The only sense he had was his vision, which was fading quickly as he ran out of breath. As he looked up, facing his certain death, his eyes started to close. Just before they did, he saw his attacker jolt to the side as his eyes rolled into the back of his head. He fell onto him before rolling onto his side. The pressure of the bat being taken from his throat was a relief. With a huge intake of breath, the rest of his senses came back to him as police officers surrounded him. They rushed over to him to make sure he was okay. He started to get a bit of breath back to whisper out the words, "I'm okay," barely believing that he was still alive. He turned his head to see the attacker slumped next to him with a bullet put straight through his brain. Before he knew it, he had EMTs talking to him as emergency workers buzzed all around. It was as if he was living his worst nightmare, dazed and confused. Travis was still connected to the Zoom call, with that nightmare played out on his screen. The 4 screens were all active. Ryan's had gone black, he had his own, and there were Sean's and Stefan's, who both abandoned their screens to help the stricken Ryan. "Are you okay, Sean?" he said to the black screen, phoning him at the same time but getting no response. Eventually, he got a small reply. "I'm okay. I'm going to the hospital," he heard back, barely through all the noise that was happening. Travis shut down the Zoom call and decided to make the long drive to Mansfield. It was the only thing he could think of doing right now. The next morning, Sean awoke in the hospital. For a split second, he thought that it had been all a terrible dream, but the reality soon crushed him. Just as he woke, he saw Travis coming into the room. "You look like shit," said Sean, jokingly. Travis's eyes were red and he clearly hadn't slept and had been crying all night. Travis scoffed at the joke before the two embraced, sharing a tear together as he pulled up a chair and sat down. "You were right about Stefan," he said, looking at the ground. "He's gone, man." Sean swallowed the truth that he already knew. "Ryan, he's still with us." "What?" retorted Sean in shocked response. "He's in a coma, but they seem optimistic. He had surgery and they think he's going to be okay," answered Travis, smiling through the tears. "Thank God! I should have checked on him. I thought they were—" "Doesn't matter," said Travis, cutting across him. "You did everything you could." The two of them talked for a while about what happened. Sean's family soon followed into the room as Sean dipped in and out of focus, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what happened. What had meant to be a fun Zoom quiz had turned into the worst night of his life. This has been Zoom Horror, written by Stories from the Attic, narrated by Robin McConnell. Copyright 2020 by Michael Vandervoort. Production copyright by Michael Vandervoort.